Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the service in a couple of moments. We ask if you have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode. Officiating today is Rabbi Alan Abramson.
Shila Malo says, Soinai Elohim, may I in Yavo Azri. Azri Mayim Adonai, I'll say Shemayim Voret. Ayitein Lamot Raglecho, Yanum Shomrecho, Inei Lo Yanum Lo Yishan Shomei Yisroel. Adonai Shomrecho, Adonai Tzilcho Yad Yeminecho, Yom Hashem Eshlo Yakek, Ov Yoreach Baloilo. Adonai Yishmarcha Mikol Ra Yishmos Nafshecha, Adonai Yishmot Eischa Voecha Me'atav Ad Olam. May be seated. We are in the period in the Jewish calendar known as the 3 weeks. It is the period between the 17th day of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, and it is the saddest 3 weeks in the Jewish calendar, because it was during this time that the holy city of Jerusalem was besieged, the temple was destroyed, and the Jewish exile began. Interestingly, the Rambam, Maimonides, in his code, Yad Chazakah, writes that this period of what we call the mourning period, the Mourning, the period of Avelut, is done so not because a structure, the temple of bricks and mortar, was destroyed, but because of the immense loss of human life. Because Jewish tradition, first and foremost, honors and values human life. And valuing human life and dignity also requires that we value and present a human life when that person passes on, to receive a dignified funeral and burial as they ascend their neshama, their soul, through the gates of heaven. And so it is for these reasons that we are here. This family insisted upon treating Steve in the dignified way with Jewish values, as the Rambam, as Maimonides, expresses. And we mourn his loss, and we value every part of his life. So if there's one lesson that we can learn and take with us today, during this period of the 3 weeks, during this period of great sadness, is that we can take and value human life and human dignity, and remember always that this family came across and saw to it that Steve would receive a dignified burial according to Jewish tradition. I'd like to call upon Avi now to please say a few words.
Thank you all for joining us this morning. Steve was 13 years older than me and always seemed larger than life. One of my earliest memories of Steve was when I was a young child, maybe 3rd or 4th grade, preparing care packages for him while he was stationed in Germany. I could still picture the small square cardboard boxes that my parents and I would use to try to squeeze as many delicious and practical things that Steve would enjoy into such a small space. Shortly after Steve's return from Iraq during Operation Desert Storm, I arranged for him to visit my 6th grade class at Mark Twain Elementary School. He came dressed in full fatigues and delivered his first-hand account of serving in the U.S. Army overseas. I will never forget how proud I felt to call him my brother. Throughout my teens and 20s, my relationship with Steve waned and strengthened depending on where his life took him. Sometimes in Chicago for months at a time, sometimes just a quick weekend trip. One thing I know for sure is that I would have no idea what a Saluki is if I had not gone with my father to visit him at Southern Illinois University. I remember losing to him for several years in bowling until I finally started to grow some muscles, and I remembered enjoying conversations with him in line at Six Flags Great America. Steve was exactly the person you would want sitting next to you on a roller coaster because his enthusiasm made it so much fun. As I grew older into my late 20s and 30s, my relationship with Steve greatly diminished, but we still kept in touch. I was glad that he was able to attend my wedding, walking down the aisle as my brother. And even though he was not familiar with the customs and practices of an Orthodox Jewish wedding, in the second set, when the band started playing the oldies, Steve got out on the dance floor and strutted his stuff. I remember that in the end, he had a great time. I remember how much Steve loved sports, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, and the Bears, and how conflicted he was when the Cubs or the Bears would play an Arizona team. I recently spoke to Steve's friend, Randy, who shared with me what might have been the very last time Steve watched a sports game. Randy visited Steve when he was under the weather, and they watched one of the Suns' recent playoff games. A real nail-biter, he said, and they had a blast, and that makes me so happy. As of Wednesday night, the Suns made it into the NBA championship, so even though I know they're not Steve's favorite team, I'll be cheering for them in Steve's memory. From my earliest memories of Steve, I remember how he always had such a great personality and a zest for life. Steve was always on a journey, always moving, always hiking, always experiencing, and he always did it with a smile and a sense of adventure. Something I keep hearing as friends and family reflect on their memories of Steve is that they remember the jovial sense in which he carried himself. Always with a laugh or a joke. In Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 1, Mishnah 15, Shammai teaches us to greet every person with a smile, which is something Steve exemplified to the fullest extent. He found humor and joy in everything he did and everywhere his life took him. With all of my many memories of Steve, if I take nothing else from my relationship with him, it will simply be this: find joy in everything that you do. Don't be afraid to have a good laugh, and greet everyone with a cheerful face. I now call upon my father, Steve's father, Frank Zimmerman, to share some remarks.
First off, I would like to thank everybody for coming. Appreciate that. I have so many fond memories of my son Stephen, I barely know where to begin. So let's start with when he was 4 years old. We were having breakfast one morning at the Sovereign Hotel, and I had an egg omelet. And he said, "Dad, can I have a piece of your egg?" And then make a long story short, he wound up eating my entire omelet, and I had to order one for myself. Never forget that memory. He loved asking how to spell words on signs, so that time he was 5 years old, he knew the entire alphabet. He was an avid Cub fan, even worked at Wrigley Field one season. Stephen was one of the most liked students at Roger Grammar School, and then from there he went on to Ridgewood High School in the class of '85 in Highwood Heights. He graduated from Ridgeview and started going to Navy Pier for 2 years. Then decided to join the Army. He served it for 6 years, experiencing Desert Storm and Iraq. Being in communications, he was able to call me weekly to tell me what was happening there during the war. Afterwards, after he got discharged, he enrolled in Southern Illinois University, 4-hour drive from Chicago. After 2 years, he followed his good friend Chris to Phoenix. And after many starts and stops, he graduated with a degree in teaching. And from there, he went to China. He got accepted to teach China. But unfortunately, the school administrator was pressuring him to join the Communist Party. So after 6 months, he came home. He always came to Chicago 1 week a year, and I would go out to Phoenix one week a year. While in Phoenix, we made many, many trips all through the state. And there isn't a popular spot in the state of Arizona that we didn't get to. The Grand Canyon, Tombstone, where the OK Corral and Wyatt Earp had his fight, Superstition Mountain, every major site we saw over the years. He was a genuine Cubs fan and went to games every time he came in. And Steve never complained in good times and bad. He always had a smile on his face, was always in good spirits, more than I could do. He was always known to be offering people help. Anybody needed any help to move furniture, to get a repair, and whatever it was, he was always glad to help. He always smiled. In my opinion, he was a great gift to the people who knew him and to the world. And I will miss him with every breath I take until I take my last breath.
Now we say Tzaddik Adin. So Tamim Palok Ichol Rachamish Bar Elemeno Ve'eno Ve'el Tzadik V'Yasharhu Asor Tamim B'chol Po Miyom Ma'alomat B'chol Ashalit B'Matzav B'Ma'al Amy Simachaya Mori Shal V'Yoal Asor Tamim B'chol Ma'aseh Miyom Ma'arilov B'Mataseh Omer B'Oseh Chesed Chinam Manos Aseh V'Skusaneh Tak Seh Kshiva V'Yaseh Tzadik B'chol Rachov Asor Tamim Melech B'Yim Rachamim Chamol no v'chus no avosu vonem ki l'chodon asichos v'rachamim Tzadik ato Adonai l'misl chayos asher b'yotcha pigdon kol v'chos Chalila l'chol azochaynu l'chos v'yonecha b'rachamim alena b'kachos v'l'chodon l'rachamim v'asichos Adam and ben shana yeh lev shan yichya ma'yison lo kol yaya baruch hayon amech ma'isim chayeh B'rechu ki emes dino mishatei l'akol b'ino mishalem l'odam cheshbono v'dino Hakol l'shmo hadaya yitenu Yadanu Adonai ki tzedek mishpatecha tzitak v'dvarecha v'zizkeh b'shavtecha v'in lahar achamita shavtecha tzituk Adonai b'yosho mishpatecha Dayan amesh shofei tzedek amesh baruch Dayan amesh hakom mishpatav tzedek emes Nefesh kochai b'yadecha tzedek mali yiminecha v'davidecha rachem apleitas al-yadecha v'soma l'malach chera b'yadecha V'dol le'itzav rav l'yashu necha b'kos hakol v'rechei v'nidam I'll say sleep to Chav Chaviv Alav Hagiga Shod and Hatsuri below Sabo Adonai Malach, Adonai Malach, Adonai Nasan, Adonai Lakach Yishem, Adonai Mavarach, Urachum Yichaper Rabon V'lo Yashchitz V'chol Shiva Po, V'lo Yirkol Chamaso, Adonai Oshia Melech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu.
Those who want to participate in the burial will do so from either side of the mound. Go on that side, we'll carry it. Okay, stay right here and relax. Your book is going to come on. Who's that? That's his.
when you're up for it, you should take a shovel and shovel the dirt.
You know what? Father doesn't have to. What? He doesn't have to shovel.
No, but he's in good shape. He's just having a trip.
So you hold him. Just hold him.
Yeah.
One at a time, so he can go now. Be careful. Stand on the wood that's solid.
Oh, right.
Carol.
That's what I'm.
I don't mean to tell you the business, but that's it.
He wants to sit with the flag. We're gonna get him back by the flag.
No, we're good, we're good. Yeah, we're listening.
El Molei Rachamim Shochim B'Amrom B'Mametzei Menucha Nechona Tachas Kanfei Hashchina B'Malos Kedoshim Mutorim Kazor Harakim Asirim Es Nishmas Stephen Ben Ephraim Shalach Li Olamo B'Gan Eden Tei Menucha Solachem Bal Rachamim Yastirehu B'Seisek Anafaf Lo Olamim V'Yisror B'Surachayim Es Nishmaso Al Denoy Nachaloso V'Yinuach Al Mishkavo Al Shalom V'Nomar Amen. 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 Yeh Shmei Rabba V'Velach Olam Olamei Omaya. Berechu.